the same, ain't no debate. Confused, I'm making break by the foundation. Get it.
I'm happy that my previous teammates from Niski and FLICKR both made the MSI because we got robbed off of MSI appearance in 2020 when we won Spring Split.
Back in the LCS, they're known for being a really aggressive early game team, so I think you'll probably see a lot of fighting early on.
Golden Guardians is a team that I think we can't lose to. I think we just outclass them.
But I do think that we are a lot stronger than we were back in the LCS finals. I think we just had a lot of fatigue from the whole lower bracket run. We'll have a totally different series this time.
They know what happened last time we played against them. We are better and we know it.
今年也是有2个名嘛，然后也跟我的前战队京东也是一起来到了 MSI。
我觉得牙膏选手的话，因为我比较熟悉他，我觉得他要小心一点，我会去针对他的。
They now hold the legacy in the LPL as we bow to JDG once again.
其实我之前是想和京东在决赛相遇的，但是现在已经碰上了，那就不得不把他们先送走了。
因为我们和 BLG 也交手了很多次嘛，然后就是都比较熟悉。我们从来就没有输过。我非常有自信在上路拿到主动权。
我认为他在决赛跟我的对局，我并不觉得他打得比我好，但我觉得我是很强的上单。
我觉得冰选手比较有个人实力比较突出，然后比较自信。希望和冰一起打一个精彩的比赛，
然后造成一个上路碾压的姿势，然后再帮助我的队友。
Welcome back, everyone, to MSI 2023 live from London, England. As that's a happy Mother's Day wish there for Missing, I believe, who obviously will be thinking of her today as they go up against BLG. It is a rematch of the finals in the LPL, and later today we'll also have Cloud9 up versus Golden Guardians. This one, though, is for a chance to play T1 in the upper bracket final. Here we go, the warm-up. Making sure that everyone's ready. You know, we've seen many different ways of warming up in the last couple of days. This one's probably good to get the blood flowing, and I hope that we can do our part in that as well. My name's Shox, joined here by Chronicler and Emily for a very exciting clash.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I mean, these two teams are very familiar with each other, as they themselves said. It's a rematch of the LPL finals, so it's going to be a good one.
We've seen it a couple of times. Now, yesterday, of course, we saw a T1 victory over JDG. After 5 games, Maurits, the Madmen, they did it.
And it is such a big moment for this T1 because they have struggled so much. Yes, domestically, they were able to get a best-of-5 win, but internationally it hadn't happened for like 6 years, and it's something that we know how good this team can be when they're playing at their peak, but it's their drafts, it's their mental that has very often been criticized, and in this series I really do think that if we gloss over that game number 3, we clearly saw how powerful of a team this T1 is.
Yeah, I think a lot of us did expect that instant 3-0, but like you said, it was really cool seeing them come out and win a best-of-5, especially against JDG. This is a team they've faced so many times in the past few years, and it actually had never gone to all 5 games in any of those attempts until yesterday.
Particularly this final moment of the series, it was over in the blink of an eye. We were going to 5 games, you know, we had the back and forth, and then T1, in classic T1 fashion, won 1 team fight, and it was over.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people say the 5th game was so LCK-esque, and all the rest was actually completely different. But it is T1 that goes ahead to the upper bracket finals. JDG is not out. Of course, they have another chance. In fact, they will be playing the winner of Cloud9 Golden Guardians because it flips in that way. Now, T1 was heralded as one of the favorites going into this tournament, but have they changed your opinion with yesterday's victory? Are you willing to put them higher on that tier list?
Yeah, I really think that with yesterday's performance, dispelling some of the doubts about their mental, plus showing that in the current meta they can perform with Guma Yushi's level of play at the moment, they are clearly the tournament favorite, in my opinion.
Yeah, for me, it's that I think they had the best meta read, and now we see every other team kind of adjusting to that, which is what turns them into, like they already were a favorite, now it turns them into the favorite.
And of course, the caveat that we'll see JDG and BLG today, and there is a certain level of expectation as to what we will see. Now, we've seen it a couple of times, in fact, 2 times in playoffs. So Emily, give me the TLDR of what happened when they met in playoffs and how you think they approach here today.
Yeah, actually the first time these 2 teams met, BLG nearly won that series. It was so close. And I know afterwards, 369 and the rest of JDG came out and said, yeah, we hadn't played yet in this playoff bracket. They were coming in very fresh off of series coming in. So we were able to readjust going into finals. They even called it for a 3-0 for themselves. It ended up being a 3-1, but it was still a 3-1 that was very JDG favored.
And that's the big thing, right? The adjustment that they made specifically with how they approach the meta based on the compared to the first series was a really big difference. Because in those highlights, you saw Ruler on Jinx popping off repeatedly, and that is something that in the first series they were still kind of skirting around, trying some different bot lane strategies. But when they defaulted back to what has worked for Ruler for like, what, 6 years now, play around him in heavy-duty team fights, it worked out amazingly.
Yeah, and here we're going to see some of those stats with the presence of these 2 champions in LPL Spring, and then the Spring Finals, and now MSI. I think the big interesting thing is that JDG is already adjusted, right? We talked about they're going to be playing these bot lane hyper carries that we've seen from other teams as well. However, just as recently as the C9 series, we saw BLG still going for those pushing bot lanes that that was what JDG adjusted away from, right? And that's what was dominating the meta for most of Spring. So I'll be curious to see if BLG now adjusts.
Yes, I guess the expectation is that when you go up against your LPL counterparts, your LCK counterparts, that you're not going to do that. Is that correct?
Ooh, I don't know. I think...
Is it about the level of competition is what I'm implying here?
Yeah, I would personally say so.
Okay. Okay, you
okay,
agree.
yeah. No, I just agree. No, well, yeah.
I don't want you to flame anyone. Don't worry, Mao.
I would never. You know me.
It's true, indeed. So, well, it is a lot of interesting duels across the board, and it's a vintage LPL top lane duel between Bin and 369 in today's featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz.
In this featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz, we get to see the continuation of a legendary rivalry between 2 of the league's best top laners.
Everyone just looking to get out, but Ben keeps going! Kenanauko coming in, Ben going mega, finding one, he uses a Gnar of his own, and just like that, BLG comes alive!
Giga Ben, don't miss! They've been constantly dueling each other back and forth for years. They know each other's champions, plays, patterns, and weaknesses.
There's just not enough damage! 369 shows up, they lock him down, they burst him!
因为我们和 BLG 也交手了很多次嘛，都比较熟悉。
With each player getting stronger after every loss, it has gone beyond a match between mere competitors and has transformed into a rivalry for the ages that now has shaped the LPL and is ready to shape the international scene as well.
其实我之前是想和京东在决赛相遇的，但是既然现在已经碰上了，那就不得不把他们先送走。
This is Bin versus 369.
Top lane matchup, and it's one of the reasons why I know that some people were bummed about the regional rematches, but this one is so cool because we see it domestically a lot, but not as often on the international stage, and they've got quite the rivalry going.
Yeah, I mean, we already heard them each saying they think they're better than each other. There was a lot of trash talking going back and forth between these 2 before each of their series in the LPL playoffs. In fact, then after Bin was trash-talking 369, lost to him in finals, he then started spamming tanks, and everyone was like tracking his solo queue count, and they're like, Bin's a changed man. Like, but I think it's really interesting because 369 previously, going into last year, was someone who was criticized for not having a certain flexibility to his play. He readjusted, he really grinded, became a much more well-rounded player throughout last year, and this year can do whatever his team wants him to do. So it's really interesting to see if Bin goes through that similar evolution where he turns into someone who can not only carry games, but also can play tanks and do more for his team that way.
And what I think is really important, as we saw the stats there, that isn't really a comment on specifically the top lane matchup, right? We know how much top lane is impacted by draft, jungle presence, and whatnot. I actually think it speaks testament to 369 that he's willing to be the guy that says, hey, you know, I'll blind Sion just to make sure that the rest of the team can play. And for Bin, even in this tournament, I think we've seen him move towards that, but I don't know if he will fully commit. But the meta might force him to.
Yeah, that's the question indeed, because we want to see that top lane matchup play out in all its glory, Emily. But we have seen a shift towards, no, we're just going to enable our AD carry to do as much as they can do, and we're just going to play that wet noodle lane and get our impact in team fights, which can also not be underestimated.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why I'm curious. We did already see Bin pull out the Scion, right? So I am curious to see what he brings out against 369, or whether he'll just be like, nope, I'm better than you. I'm slamming in a counter pick. What do you think?
I think he's got to commit. I think you just have to play around Elk, because right now it's all about the bot lane. So Bin, I'm sorry, 369 was right all along. Just pick a Sante, pick a tank, and accept that right now it's not about you.
It's not, but let's dive a little bit deeper into Bin's story with Emily.
All right, welcome back to another international edition of Draw My Life, Bin. Chen Bin Jae Bin got his pro start on Suning's LDL team in 2019. He was then called up to the Suning main team in 2020. Bin actually attended the same school as Jackie Love, and there's an anecdote he had on stream where one time he ended up eating Jackie Love's leftovers. Bin received international attention for his Gangplank and Camille at Worlds 2020 with Suning when they unexpectedly made finals. With Royal Give Up in 2022, Bin won the mid-season invitational. After joining BLG in 2022 summer, for 2023, Bin stayed on BLG. This team unexpectedly made it to Spring 2023 finals and to MSI. After losing to 369 and JDG in LPL finals, Bin began spamming tanks in solo queue. Now nicknamed Gigabin by international audiences, Bin is a carry force for BLG. And yeah, it's just fun to go back and look at. I love Bin. Like, he obviously, when I first interviewed him in 2020, I asked him about the TP Smite or TP Ignite Camille, and he was like, "Why wouldn't my team believe in me? I have hands. Like, I can do it." Like,
I love this
there's
one.
no question. So he's such a fun player.
This was great. Emily, you're such a treasure. I don't think we tell you nearly enough, but let's continue with this pre-match. We're already prepped and primed for top, but let's look at the mid lane as well, because in terms of the relationship between these two and their career trajectories, Yagao versus Knight, there's also a lot to be said.
Yeah, so Yagao and Knight are friends. This is something I know they've brought up on the LPL broadcast a few times as well. They started playing kind of on the same internet cafe team. Yagao played mid, and Knight actually swapped away from mid so that Yagao could play. When they both debuted, though, Knight was the next big LPL mid, right? And he's had such monstrous individual performances in LPL. But the first time they met in an LPL finals, Yagao and his team actually got the better of them in JDG TES in Spring 2020. And they've kind of been going back and forth now in LPL finals.
I also think that internationally, and even though this isn't necessarily up to individual performance, Yagao has actually been fairly successful, right? Making it the semis last year on JDG. Whereas for Knight, I do think that he has been able to get decent finishes, but the level of play he's shown domestically, I don't think we've truly seen what this player can do on the international stage, particularly if you look at the performance that he had last year.
Yeah, that's true, because we know he's such an incredible powerhouse, and we just want to see that same level of domination translate onto the international stage. Maybe this MSI is the moment for it. Now, we've talked a lot about top and mid, and I know what you're all thinking, isn't it just all around the bot lane? Well, it is, and especially in this one, Elk versus Ruler. Elk with such an incredible story where he's been on the brink of making this name for himself for so long, but everyone is noticing now, Mao.
And what is really, I want to highlight, this is including a Lucian game where he went 0-3 at the beginning. And generally, that's not when Lucian excels at, right? So the fact that he's still able to put up these numbers is incredible. And I think he's also the #1 player to me on BLG that actually has been able to perform in every single. We've had some moments where Bin maybe got a little bit overexcited, right? But Elk really has been, I think, a mainstay of consistency, which, considering his history, is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's great to see him performing so well on the international stage, especially since he tried for so many years to get here with Team WE. And additionally, the big thing I'm super interested in is what he's going to play. If they are going to go to the Jinx Aphelios, or if he's going to try to slam Lucianami and see if they can beat JDG with it.
Perhaps in game one, we'll see.
Yeah,
Let's get to our MasterCard fan predictions, which I heard are the most skewed. they've been so far. Let's take a look. And I think if we look at our preview and our expectations in general, that's not really a surprise, but 86.4 JDG. They're not believing. If you don't agree, you can always go on Twitter and vote at MasterCard Nexus. But I think from the fandom and from kind of how strong JDG are perceived to be, it's understandable.
It's not only that, it's also the meta, right?
Yeah.
We keep going back to it because it is so important. Right now, it looks like it is about your bot lane. And if you have Ruler, then I think a lot of teams are already going to give you the edge, but it's also how the rest of JDG plays around it.
Yeah, we didn't talk about them that much, and I know your heart's bleeding for that, but I'm sure we will throughout the series. And we also repolled our colleagues over the LPL broadcast to see how they think this series will pan out. This is a surprise. We actually can't see it on our preview monitor. Oh, JDG, but a couple people going for BLG. Actually, 4.
Yeah.
Are you surprised by that?
I'm a bit surprised.
Why?
Mainly because, so I think, like, I'm going JDG 3-1 because I think neither of these teams play super cleanly at times, but I do think because of the meta reasons we mentioned, JDG are the better team.
I see a couple of 3-2 predictors. I know, you're like, oh, maybe if it goes all the way, maybe it can happen. I'm with Emily. I think 3-1 is very likely, particularly because I think JDG, when it comes to the consistency in their drafts, is a team that is really hard to take down. They're maybe not as temperamental, but it also means that in series, I think consistency makes a really big difference with being able to get a decisive victory.
To use a term out of Emily's book, they might outbrain and outhand no matter the draft. So we'll see. That's all from us here at the desk. It is time for the finals rematch. BLG versus JDG.
Thank you so much, Shox. I cannot wait to get into this best of 5. There might be a little bit of favorites on the side of JDG, but I just want back and forth. I want team fights. I want action.
Well, and I think that the fan vote is not indicative of how close these series were in the LPL. These two teams don't have a lot of history with each other. BLG was not someone that had really been making deep runs in the playoffs in the LPL. In fact, the first time that they met in playoffs was actually the first time ever in the LPL playoffs that they had met each other.
Yeah.
So it's not like this T1 versus Gen G style of clash, but this is going to be the third best of 5 that they've had in a couple months. The first one went all 5 games. The second one went 4. And in that first one in particular, it really came down to one fight in the final game, or BLG would have won it. They had soul in that game, so I don't think it's as cut and dry as a lot of people are making it out to be.
Yeah. And look, even if these organizations aren't entirely familiar with each other, we know that a lot of the players are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the desk already talked about Knight and Yago, but you've also got like Elk and Missing used to play together in WE, so these are two teams that are very, very familiar with each other. So I'm excited to see now how they are going to battle it out, because I'm expecting an absolute banger. I'm so glad that we get to cast this series.
I mean, it's going to be so interesting, too. Like, there's been so much discussion about the fact that, Bin was all about the carry matchup, had his trash talk with 369 in the playoffs, ended up losing both those series to him, and then goes and starts spamming tanks, right? Is he actually going to be bringing out tanks? Is he going to try to play a different role? Because his role in both of those series was to play the carries. He created individual advantages, and often Shun was playing heavily towards him, where 369 was very much so the weak side player, but 369 was always able to have impact in those fights on the tanks. So will Bin be going back to his classic style, or he'll be making those adaptations? And that's really what I want to see coming into MSI. What are the changes these teams have?
It's an excellent question. K'Sante definitely a champion that's on my mind. It's been rising in priority. It was good in the playoffs, but it feels unstoppable here on the MSI stage. Will either team prioritize picking it up early? But we see a lot of similar bans to what we've seen in patches previous. Annie, Vi, Lucian, Rakan, all pretty standard thus far.
I wouldn't be surprised to see a few curveballs thrown into the mix, though, because as you said, these teams are very familiar. We saw a lot of respect in the first series towards things like the Syndra for Knight, a massive pick for him. Also, the Ahri is going to be a big one, and even Bin getting his respect on the Kennen line.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. I mean, Zeri obviously for them in playoffs was such a huge pick. Ruler, a monster on that champion, but we have been mostly just getting Jinx Aphelios trades in every single game, it feels like here. So, will that trend continue? Because I've been feeling like Jinx does feel like the better end of that trade, and it has been seeming to come out on top in a lot of these matchups.
Also, if the Ahri isn't banned here, I imagine first pick, but actually going to be Nautilus. So The other one is the Maokai. Has actually been super high priority for the LPL teams. They've been valuing it a lot more than we've seen kind of from the Western teams. But it is Knight, it is Ahri. I'm not going to be surprised to see him lock it in.
And I think for a lot of mid laners, the blind pick Ahri feels a little bit more risky given how many tankier counter picks we've seen come out. But for Knight, the level he executes at makes the champion always feel relevant, always feel strong. So it's not surprising to see him pick him here.
Well, and it's kind of indicative of the two team styles, right? Knight wants to be this dominant carry force for Yagao. He is more of that supportive role. You know, he could be going towards things like the Galio, like the Veigar. Those were hugely in his comfort picks. Lissandra also a good answer, something that he can play. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him continue to play that more supportive role where Knight is going to want to be proactive on the map and really try to make things happen.
Especially if you take something like the Jinx here, you can go towards something like the Veigar, contain the Ahri to a certain extent, and then just make sure you got the range advantage when you come into these team fights. And Yagao has definitely been someone who's excelled when it comes to, hey, can I control the pace of this team fight with picks like the Veigar and the Galio? So I'm curious if that is going to be the game plan here coming into this best of 5.
And you called it the Jinx. It's the preferred side of the Jinx Aphelios match, but it seems like BLG agree with you. They grab the Jinx, they grab the Lulu. Pretty hard to contest this bottom lane in terms of just raw meta value. You can match with a range support. Maybe you pick up something like a Thresh, but it feels pretty cut and dry for JDG here to just pick a bot lane for themselves.
Also the opportunity to go towards the Blitzcrank here if you want to, though. That's one of the things where we oftentimes see the Lulu kind of last pick, because then you ban away Thresh, Blitzcrank, and you don't have these issues. Missing has been always across his career really, really damn good on the Thresh, so probably going to see that one come through, and maybe we'll see some of those hooks not missing in this game.
Taking their time, though. What do they want to pair with this Aphelios? Will it be the Blitzcrank? Have to be aware that if they don't lock something like that in here, it will probably get banned away, but jungle also could be priority. Thresh, still the premier pick, however.
Yeah, I mean, Thresh does make a lot of sense, especially with how much dive we've been seeing in general. It seems to be really, really popular. A lot of these kind of beefy comps that people are drafting with a lot of frontline obviously does have that dive. This can help to keep the Aphelios quite safe. Ahri obviously has a lot of mobility herself with the ulti. Lissandra makes a lot of sense. It's kind of the obvious answer that we've been seeing mostly to the Ahri, unless people want to go to something like a mid Cassante or something along those lines and just go pure tank. But this is going to be really interesting. With BLG on the red side, you're expecting 5th pick for Bin. So it is kind of feeling like BLG's draft is leading towards carry top again for Bin, which is very much his style.
Yeah, and I think you talked about curveballs, but this first 3 is the vanilla ice cream of MSI drafting. I mean, maybe it's French vanilla. Maybe it's because, you know, the players are so good. Maybe it's got the little pieces of vanilla bean in it. But this is about as standard as it gets, boys. So we're going to have to see. I feel like top lane picks, jungle picks, obviously a lot of room to take premier options off the board. So maybe that's where we finally start to get to see some of those curveballs you talked about, some of those more unique carry options for a player like Bin.
Well, and I do really like the Gwen ban here. You know, this is something that we were actually talking about earlier, and I was saying, hey, if Bin is going to play carries, I would rather him play a carry that can also be strong in team fights, because it does feel like that is the meta now. It's show up at the objectives, it's look for the 5v5s. So yes, he is incredible on the Jax, but something like the Gwen really does fit the bill much more for those team fights. So I think it's intelligent for JDG. If you want to target carries, target the ones that are best in 5v5.
Yeah. Do they want to take away any of the options for jungle? Wukong Vi already banned away, expecting an AD jungler. You know, something like Viego has looked pretty solid paired alongside Lissandra. You do want some upfront burst damage to make sure.
Oh, he's watching you. Look out!
I'm intimidated.
I do like your point, though, on the Wukong, because Wukong has been such a big pick for Kanavi even over the course of the year. But okay, that's actually surprising. Sion
The
going to take
gauntlet
it away.
has been laid down. Not one that anyone expected, but there it is. He spammed in solo queue. Finally, we get to see it.
Well, and this is the curve. I mean, maybe not the most exciting curve, but this is kind of the curve.
This is the curve.
Bin, in both their series in the LPL, was all about the carries, and he was always on that side of the matchup. There was more pressure on him to get things done. I want to see, is Shun going to go towards something like a Kindred? Because they're relatively low damage, and he is so well known for his Kindred. I was really impressed by his play on it. He was undefeated in the regular season, did pick up quite a few losses in playoffs, to be fair, but was really, really good on it. And it's just kind of meatball versus meatball up in the top lane, so you know it's not going to be about the 1v1 there. Would Kanavi take it away? Would he take it away?
Okay.
He's saying, I know what you're going for.
He knows what he's going to play. He's calling it out right now. They've got a bit more damage on the side of JDG at this exact moment. Feeling good about the Xin Zhao, saying if you anticipating the Kindred, ready to go all in if he needs to. Instead, the Kha'Zix, very aggressive.
Also, really tough to deal with as Kindred. Actually, really, really difficult. If he gets a jump on you, he's going to be able to burst you down.
Okay!
Nidalee was not what I was expecting here at all.
I mean, it does play into the range, right? You can actually go and look, we can go for poke, we can have the range with the Jinx, but definitely as you talk about the jungle matchup, it's not wonderful.
And there's not a lot of poke, really. Like, sure, you have Jinx range, you could zap or whatever, but I like Nidalee when it's paired with Jace and Ezreal and things like that, and you can really overload or Varus, and it's really overloading on that poke. I think there's a lot of pressure on Shun to get things done early, but like, what is the setup here, guys? we have Lissandra Root to try to set up your spears in team fights. Like, there's no point in click CC. You don't have a good lane to gank. Are you going top? No. Are you gonna go bot with Lulu gank assistance? No. Like, you can go mid with Ahri, but then you're doing double magic damage. Knight is gonna rush Mercs, and I feel like I don't think he's gonna get much done.
It's Gigabit. You just land the Q. It's easy. Just hit the Q and then you get the setup.
Yeah, that's always the answer.
Just channel the Q in their face.
You have no setup. Well, see, you don't need setup if you just hit the Q.
Yeah. Ben has hands, as we heard from him. He's good. Why wouldn't his teammates trust him to land the Q? I am concerned, but I do love that in this world where we're talking about bot laners as the big premier carries, maybe mid or top, it's junglers who get the curveball. It's all eyes on the junglers now. You know, everything about team fighting, it feels like for both sides, but the jungler's the one really mixing things up.
Absolutely, and I think push becomes so important when you are playing with the Nidalee. Nidalee is a feast or famine champion. It needs to be in the face of their opponent, it needs to be getting these invades, needs to be taking away camps, and that requires pushing lanes.
And it's something that definitely BLG are going to be used to. Shun, when he came into the league, was known for his Kindred, one of the most banned champions against BLG, and for his Nidalee. He wanted to be that big carry style back even when he played on IG. So this is where BLG definitely want to try and play the style, and are well used to it at this stage.
And of course, featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz is Ben and 369. Ultimately,
369 looking happy, but Ben was mad dogging us.
Ben, we'll see. You know, we'll see how this tank v tank matchup goes. It's a bit anticlimactic, but it ultimately gives room for other players to now show up and step up. And as you highlighted, early lane prio so big for the junglers, maybe a cheeky invade.
Yeah, they are looking like they're going to use the Scion for the level 1, and I think it does make sense. You know, when you are playing this Nidalee, you need to get some pressure, you need to get some sort of advantage. What will the response be from JDG? Because 369 is up on this top side, and they are going to spot out this war, so they know that it has been spotted. It's 4-man invade, and nothing you can really do about this, to be honest.
And we have yet to see this strategy fail. We've seen teams be more prepared for it, but the Scion is always killing someone on the bottom side of the map. So we'll have to see if JDG are ready here.
Are they going to stay 3-man brush stack for this? This is actually interesting. I wonder if they're going to 3-man brush stack bot. You know, previously we had seen some teams actually try to push hard for the level 2 on through bot. I actually like this. On comes over and just uses the heal to actually put Yagao ahead in that trade. So it is an early heal down, but I think it's actually worth it if you can get the push there, because again, it's going to be so much about these winning lanes. They've already taken down one camp. Kanavi's trying to finish this. He's not going to be able to get the little Krugs though, and that's where all the gold is. He's Q-start, so you're going to lose almost all this. He does get level 2 though.
Okay, Shun, level 2, red buff. Ooh. Pulling the wave. Only 1 minion so far. They're going to need a bit more time to stack it up. We're going to be in the bottom lane for a while if they want to try to pull anything off. Yeah. TP back.
Oh, he's on ward. He's got to block this.
Missing. Ready.
Yeah, even the fact as well, Kanavi actually managed to get the W off the level 2 and steal away a lot of those small creeps as well. So Kanavi even isn't that far behind comparatively. Like, yes, the camp down, but it's not too bad. And you've actually managed to deny the dive on bot lane. So nice job by JDG there.
Yeah, not bad at all, but the reality is, it's like, Ben didn't lose much, right? It's a pushing wave. He TP's up top to actually catch most of that, so he loses 4 CS, a little bit of XP. Who cares? It's your Scion. So you're still going to be happy to get that advantage there for Nidalee. And as long as Yagao can actually keep the push top, if Ben can get something going up on this top side as well, Shun has the opportunity to just clear bot all the way up to top and just have a 2-camp lead, right? Like, he can basically do an 8-camp opening here and just try to take away those topside camps, not allow Kanavi to get that back, and that'll put the Kazakhs down a fair bit of XP.
Yeah, and I think the only real way that you can punish this from the side of BLG is to punish Ben while he doesn't have TP, force him out of lane, you know, take more resources away from him. And while Scion ultimately won't care too much, he's a champion that can just sit back and go down in CS. It's a difficult thing to punish. I still think the Scion start is so oppressive, and while certainly JDG have handled it the best of any team we've seen, it's just a frustrating strategy to deal with.
Yeah, we see it so often every time the Jinx is in the matchup. The fact you can get the push, especially with the Lulu, just sets up so wonderfully for it. So I will be curious to see as this MSI goes on, if teams kind of figure out a better strategy to really deal with it, because it feels like, as you say, no matter what, you're out behind.
I mean, at a certain point, I think you almost have to just start anticipating it and start planning for the cross map, right? You know, Kha'Zix in this situation, if you try to start enemy red or do things like that, it would almost have to be a concerted effort to invade topside, get vision there, and try to start an enemy camps, and then you're kind of just accepting that you're going to be going in a cross map. But even then, that can work in the Sion team's favor, because if you're actually cross mapping, you're taking towards bot, and it's tank versus tank top. That's not really where the jungle wants to be. So it is really interesting. There are answers you can do, especially if you go for really strong early game champions that can kind of answer that fight. If you have an Olaf or something like that on your team, but that just hasn't really been what we've been seeing.
Yeah, look, I love the lane swap meta. You know, we just have to bring it back fully.
Don't you curse us with
Hey, if Deficio was here, he'd tell you all about how EU figured it out. It was EU's credit, the lane swap meta. He would love that. I personally, never again. Don't bring it back.
Where's Krepo? We need to hear about how to take Krugs.
Kha'Zix had it figured out. Elk is in a bit of trouble here. Lantern gonna bring Knight over the wall, just looking for the setup. The easy follow-up and a quick kill and first blood for JDG. A kill traded back, however, a bit disastrous to give that gold into the back pocket of Elk.
Yeah, Kanavi end up tanking it, and now you get the kill. Back hook, though.
Hook onto the Nidalee. Follow-up damage not quite there. Yagao in the area now. Ruler backing off, missing. Knight still in the area. 3 members for both sides, so the play will fizzle, but a lot of money that should have gone into Jinx's pocket didn't. The only really redeeming factor here is that she did get the kill gold.
Yeah, even on gold between Elk and Ruler, it is Knight, of course, who picked up the kill on the other side, so he is going to be the beneficiary there. But I do like JDG's position in this game already a lot. Yeah, jungle advantage is going to be in the favor of Shun, but we have not yet seen a Nidalee really be able to snowball an early lead into much of a meaningful advantage in the mid game and late game.
And I mean, what we have seen is really the AD carries have been the difference makers. And Ruler's now already 10 CS up. He's in a great spot. Kanavi does take a bit of damage, but should be totally fine. Like, you're still trying to keep your eyes on bot lane to see how much JDG can try and punish Elk.
Certainly is the case. Again, behind in XP a little bit as those waves went through, but I think should be fine overall. Elk just keeping the pressure on here. Ruler missing a lot of agency to maybe get a play kicked off while they have access to the Graviton. Kanavi, though, spotted an award means I don't really think there's going to be a great angle.
Shun is coming down, so I think BLG are going to try to bait this 3v3. They know that he's in the area. Will he actually step forward and try to make this play happen?
Right now, he's kind of waiting with bated breath, seeing if either side is going to get aggressive, is going to go for something. Ruler has the tools to lock down Elk. Still has the cleanse available, however. Not going to be too itchy on the trigger finger there, though. We'll just accept the route and walk away.
Yeah, a lot of time spent down here from both junglers, and it can become kind of this sunk cost fallacy where you've been staying so long you feel like you need to get something. So Shun has actually just bailed out. He's starting up the dragon, so it looks like it will be an uncontested BLG dragon where Kanavi has invested all this time towards bot side, is already down 15 CS, not going to be able to get the dragon. He's just going back to base to do his camps on top side.
Huge for Shun in this early game. They put him ahead, obviously, with the Scion start, but he's been able to keep that going forward, and so much time spent on the bottom side while he was able to assist in that kill, assist in that dive. It's Nidalee who's taking these early objectives and who's keeping up this jungle clear speed.
It's also really nice because this is pre-Herald spawn, so there's not even an opportunity for a trade.
Yeah, and I think a large portion of this now kind of comes down to Knight has been able to get the push in mid lane, but how much is he going to be able to try and influence the map from that state? I don't think he can really go towards top. It feels like a lot of it is going to be down towards the bottom side, but I'd love to see him trying to link up with Kanavi as he does get pushed. Now the level 6 is hit. See if you can try and get into the face of Shun, because if you manage to get a charm onto this Nidalee and she's isolated, you will blow her up in the enemy jungle.
Certainly will. Very vulnerable champion. Of course, Nidalee, when you get a start like this, is always going to feel good. AP jungler's clear speed just increases exponentially with those early items. See how much faster it can get. But yeah, Nidalee is a champion that you highlighted Feast or Famine. She's kind of the glass cannon. You know, you're going to have these great highlight moments where you hit that max range spear. We saw one on the Kanavi in the bottom lane. But most fights and most players struggle to find an impact outside of really bloody or really explosive early games.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that Nidalee can be really strong in small-scale skirmishes. To me, the problem comes when you end up in 4v4s and 5v5. Like, great, you hit a spear and you want to jump in, but there's a thresh in between you. You can play away, you can get charmed out of that, you can get knocked up or CC'd or stunned, and then you're just instantly going to be going down. So, you know, often you just get relegated to kind of being this spear bot. You're just throwing out those spears trying to get something. And when there's someone like an Ornn who can just kind of stand in front and bodyguard, or even a lot of lifesteal in the ADs, it becomes really difficult to get more than that. So that's why it's so important to have this impact early.
Yeah, and also it's, we kind of hit on yesterday. Ox was telling me that the Ornn getting some major buffs that were kind of overlooked because it was a bug fix where his knockups used to be what's the word? Coded.
Cleanse-
That's the word I was
yeah,
looking for. Coded for as a stun and a knockup. So if you had Merc Threads or any sort of tenacity, you wouldn't get the duration on the knockup. But now with the bug fix, you're getting a huge amount of extra time added to that knockup. So definitely going to help out when you come into these team fights. If you're trying to get onto someone like Elk, having that opportunity to set up for the dive of Knight and Kanavi when you have that ultimate coming across.
And similarly, having the access to non-committal, hard CC, the big thing about Sion, hold that thought. Coming in, Elk now trying to get the chompers down, but he's just getting cut down. Ruler ready to go forward. Easy kill on the bottom side for JDG. Nidalee coming in, but it's too little too late.
Yeah, really nicely done by missing. It's an easy setup there. Flash play, Lantern and Kanavi. They know there is no flash on Elk from that earlier tower dive, so there's no way out. They don't even need a hook to land. Shun shows up, but it's too little too late. And great, you hit the spear, but JDG are just going to reset anyway. There's nothing really to get done from it.
Shun throwing spears. He's landing them, and you're excited, London, but they're not killing anybody. One more spear?
Nope.
And this has got to be the, you get those subreddits where it's like very satisfying videos where they cut things perfectly. where it's so close to being that. The rocket doesn't quite kill, the spear doesn't quite kill, nothing is finishing the job.
It's tough, and as you see, Ruler now, more and more of an advantage being built up for him. And when you look back to this series in the LPL, it was often so goes bot lane, so goes the game, right? When Ruler gets ahead, it's very difficult to depend on any sort of mistakes from this guy in the 5v5s. Where JDG, I think, better than BLG, really do organize well in these team fights. They're very well coordinated. They create space for Ruler, and he always makes the most of it.
But that's the thing, the team fight has definitely been about Ruler for JDG, but the actual early stages has generally been about Kanavi and how he conveyed, but missing that cost.
Here I'm missing. He might just try to burn down the stretch. Just instantly going to shred that life bar, taking an opportunity. The spear connects. BLG instantly follow up. The Herald in their eyes, but it's already been smited away. You got trying to keep the fight going, but keep your eyes on Ruler. The Ophelia so damn strong. He's got the backup. They're just walking into him. What's the rule? BLG, I think it's green, white, don't fight. But they're going to try to make it work anyway. Knight over the backside, huge damage. Ruler coming in. It's massive. My God, a disgusting fight in favor of JDG. BLG trading some blows back, but ultimately hugely in favor of the blue team.
That was a massive turnaround for JDG. They lose missing at the start, but it doesn't matter. Ruler, I've never seen that many chakrams on an Aphelios before, just tearing through people.
Yeah, he had him fully stacked up. He was slicing them down. Honestly, BLG were lucky to get out with even a couple. Shun and Yagao got out with 10% or less on their health bars, and they lose Herald. So a disaster for BLG. Now a 2K lead here, only 11 minutes in. The Herald is still there to be dropped, so that is only going to increase. And Ruler and Knight are getting paid. Missing, yes, he is kind of separated out from the rest of the team. They do go in and actually get this kill, but they're not able to lock down anyone else. Knight escapes back towards the rest of the squad. Bin's ulti comes through, but he can't connect on anyone. The Herald is secured, and then in goes Yagao to actually try to burst down this Kha'Zix. They can, but look at Ruler, look at Knight, they're untouched.
Yeah, I mean, the fact you get that knockup, forcing the flashes from BLG into the pit, there's just nowhere really for them to escape. Elk trying to do his best, but there's just so many people dogging him every which way.
It's just Sivir, I guess, at the same time. It's two champions. This man lets it rip. He knows what's going on. And it's so crushing, too, because you have a cooldown timer that they took off of objectives. The chakrams would have fed away, but Sion zooms by and he gets to reset the countdown and keeps an extra 5 going to the fight. He doesn't have an item completed. It hit 3.5K. That's not all right.
This is the disgusting thing about JDG, because when we think about them in the regular split, a lot of it was like, hey, we're going to try and play off of Knight and 369, set up for Kanavi to be the carry and do things like this.
Getting aggressive. On going to be in trouble now. Yagao coming over the wall looking for the counter engage. Wild growth now used. Hook going to connect onto the Nidalee, but there's no follow-up. Kanavi going to get one in exchange. That's the reset. Frozen Thrall moving forward. Ruler, good guns for AoE, but not good for an extended fight. Yagao just continuing to step in. Shun ready as well. It's all magic damage, but it should be more than enough. The spear sidestep. It's clean for now. Finding the root, trying to turn it back. A bit of damage, but not nearly enough. Huge shutdown for the Nidalee.
Yeah, big chase down, and this is going to get BLG their second dragon. That was a needed win there. If they lose that fight, it's going to be so disastrous. So they are able to get that chase down. Yagao getting the slows with the Q, finding that route. Does have to commit the stopwatch, but allows Shun to get in, finish him off. Now 3-0 on this Nidalee. Will be their second dragon here on a very quick pace. So they're going to be hoping for a big soul for themselves. We'll see what they're going to have offered.
Yeah, I mean, they just spot on in River, think, oh, we can actually get the isolated damage, but just don't realize how quickly BLG can try and collapse. Yagao able to come across and everything gets blown onto On, who manages to get the wall growth, and suddenly your three members very overextended. Ruler can't really get into this fight as well because where everything's fighting, Knight has to piece out over the wall, and Yagao is just able to chase up in a moment as well to finish people off.
Yeah, I mean, the Q slows coming through there from Yagao allows him to close that gap. Ruler with a nice attempt on the turn, but the stopwatch is gonna say no.
And this is exactly what you want to see from this mid-jungle duo from the side of BLG, is landing the CC, using it to set up for the Nibali, bringing in the big damage from a champion as strong, as ahead as Shun is right now. Of course, have to keep that pressure on. Herald's going to get dropped in the mid lane, more plates to the back pocket of Ruler. Pretty snowballed pretty quickly. Gale Force expected first item here will be much more impactful in the fights to come.
And it definitely feels like for JDG as well, a lot of their opportunities to engage with 369 are just somewhat easier, right? We kind of pointed out on BLG's side, it's kind of difficult to actually set up for your team fight. You're heavily reliant on Yagao, or like we were joking, like Bin getting the knock-up, right, or even getting the ult, but you've literally got an Ornn there. Super easy to try and set up for these engages and hit someone, especially if Elk doesn't have a flash or anything like that. He's just easy picking, so I like that JDG already have the AD carry in a great spot. Knight, terror when he goes for the dives, and it's just an easier setup for these guys to do their job.
I mean, one of the things that's strongest about Ornn Engage is that it's non-committal, right? You know, you call the horn, your ram comes out, if it misses, all right, no problem, you back off. On the other side, Bin is the ram. Like, he's got to send himself in. You can't get any more committed than that.
It's the same story for Yagao.
Yeah.
They're both the ram. They both have to go in. Knight's like, okay, we can fish. I can throw out a charm. I blow you a kiss. Are you interested? Yes, no. You swipe left. All right, we back off the fight.
Passing notes in school. Yeah, exactly. Do you like me? Please check one.
Do you want to fight? YN? You know, like, you can get it kicked off. It's just so difficult for BLG now. If they can execute at a super high level, if they can get single targets, if they can isolate Ruler, you can make a fight happen, but it is all or nothing, and you need to know when you press that R button that you're going to win the fight.
And it doesn't really look like BLG are in a position to go for that right now. 2.5k goal lead for JDG. I think the next Rift Herald should be the way of JDG, as long as they can try and keep pushing mid and start to play off Knavi in the top side. But with Knight on bot lane, maybe there's an opportunity for BLG, but as you can see, Knight just having so much control over that map with jump against Yagao.
Certainly does. Continue to put the pressure on. See what Yagao wants to pick up when he backs. Assume he'll just get an Everfrost of his own, but for now, just the turret slowly getting chipped away at. Yagao gonna grab his Everfrost, but Knight very likely to grab that tower on the next wave or two.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, if Shun is able to complete the Zonias it looks like he's going for. He has the Seekers, you know, at a quick pace. Because that can allow you to go a little bit more aggressive in these fights. You know, hit a spear, dive in, try to get that kill or try to get a big chunk, then into the stasis. And if you have everyone piling in on top over that can kind of buy that space for you to then get out.
Yeah, and on the opposite side, Elk have to go for the Gale Force, so he can buy space for himself as well, right, from Knight, from Knavi, but it does mean these beefcakes with both the Gale Forces in tow are going to last quite a little bit longer than if you had a Kraken Slayer on either of these guys, so I think team fights are going to be very long fought unless one side can get access to these AD carries.
I mean, it really does raise the priority on LDR. You know, will we see people going towards that early? Because neither of the mid laners are great at killing tanks. Neither of the junglers want to be hitting tanks, right? It's really only up to these ADs, and as you say, there's no Kraken, so LDR I do think is going to be really, really important to deal with both these Jack Show tanks.
I completely agree, and I think the struggle for a Jinx who doesn't go Kraken is you pretty much always have to go an attack speed item second. Aphelios can just build BF sword items ad nauseum because of the way his kit works, so see how Elk wants to approach this from an itemization perspective. Yes, he's safer, but significantly going to hurt his damage output specifically, something to track in the future.
And I mean, if he is going to go towards, you know, an attack speed item, then that's really kind of pushing things back pretty far in your build. If you go towards something like a PD, which is great, you know, for actually getting that attack speed going, hitting those tanks, but you still need LDR, so that has to probably be on 3. Then you're waiting until 4 for your IE, which is going to be so late into the game, and that can be very, very difficult.
Certainly can be. For now, JDG again getting first setup, kicking this one off.
Ooh,
BLG, are they ready to respond? Ruler over the wall. Can just look to throw down with blue ultimate. It's going to be picked up here. Are they going to actually be able to grab the Eye of the Herald? Over the wall is 369 from downtown again. Yagao already using the ultimate. The fight hasn't even kicked off. Bin out of mana completely. Knavi in the backside. They find one, but it's right into the ult of Ruler. I think we saw this part already. And once again, JDG just finding the fight around the Herald. Zombie Ben will not be a Knight. Knight continuing to frontline here. Can just dash forward, leaping out, ready to blow him a kiss if he needs to. Spear going to connect. Ruler looking for the ball. The mark from downtown. Burn. Oh! Blinking health bar. Elk just barely able to walk away.
I mean, barely, but it's still a big win for JDG. The rocket fired out at the end just to try and get them off the turret, but the turbo's still falling. Again, BLG, they all flash into the pit, and Ruler's just waiting for them again.
Yeah, everyone is committing everything onto Knavi, and sure, the Kha'Zix is a threat, but it's a 0-4 Kha'Zix. It's a 5-kill Ari, it's a 4-kill. Aphelios, those are the guys you really have got to worry about
Doesn't
here.
matter about the size of the bug. The bug still needs to die in there, okay?
I mean, it's been tough, right? So they do get the secure early on here. You can see the ulti coming over the wall from 369 at the top of your screen, looking for that. Yagao goes into the self-stasis there, immuning the hook from missing, which is nicely done. And then Kanavi, as he stepped forward to actually pick up the eye, they all committed onto him. Everyone's flashing in, trying to kill him off, but it's right into the waiting arms of Ruler, who has the Inferno multi, splashing across everyone. They get shredded, and again, Knight untouched on the other side. Back to live now. BLG looking for Soul Point.
Trying to force a fight here.
Look at Knight, though.
Ruler, not very good guns, but he can swap off that purple, and it could be good. Knight on the flank is going to be big. Keep your eyes on that charm. Yagao looking to shut that flank down, but the charm will stop him from following up for now. Battle line's drawn. Dragon still healthy. Auto-attacking Bin. Back and forth. Ruler ready now for a fight. Herald being popped. Just going to offer an extra point of pressure here. Lines of scrimmage drawn again, looking to reset here. Yagao going to find Knight off to the side. Mid laners trading cooldowns. Knight flashing out to safety. Kanavi in the pit looking to burn this one down. Ruler, a similar story. Very slow fight. It's jungler versus jungler and the Dragon in the middle. The knockup going to be big from 369, and Ruler again untouched on the backside. Ben taking out 369. Knight trying to take as much aggro as he can. Yagao looking to follow up on the Ari. Kanavi on the retreat for now. BLG are winning the fight, but Ruler looking to take down the objective. Ruler looking to secure the Dragon with the help of Kanavi. Kanavi, will he go over the wall? Will he follow? It's been back and forth thus far, but now JDG can look to take over. They're marked. Will he take him down? The Shuriken's coming in. Ruler again taking over. JDG outplaying in the fight in the extended brawl. They take the Dragon. They come out on top, and they're killing everybody.
JDG are saying the finals was not a fluke. Game one, they are popping off in these fights, and Ruler, he does not miss with these Calibrum Qs.
It has been all about the team fights for JDG, and they are crushing BLG here. Knight is just drawing so much pressure on this bottom side. He'd already gotten the ult out of Lissandra. Missing goes in, gets that hook on Elk. He has to go for the immediate cleanse and flash, but the redirected ulti there, the dying breath from 369 knocks it through him. They're able to knock down the front line there from Bin, and then as the Dragon is secured, again, look at Ruler, untouched this entire time. He knows he can look to push forward. There's the evolved W for the slows here from Kozak, so he's moving up. Knight has still survived this entire time, and then the ulti over the wall there. Connecting on, able to get that final shot to kill off missing, and there's no shot for Elk here.
And again, commanding fight, but I don't think it's ever been correct in the history of Ruler's career to not blow him up in a fight. Like when he's allowed to run free, you could see full confidence there, fantastic fights, and of course it's a team-wide effort. But now at this point, BLG, massive deficit. They are so far behind, it's so far hard to find the setup, and you can see Bin now kind of desperately fishing, coming in through Fog of War, maybe can find an angle to get a fight started. No. The team now going to re-engage anyway. Kazuko over the wall, isolating, but they're fighting into the funnel. Ruler with waiting arms is just going to start picking up kills. BLG, desperation times, but it's costing them so much. Bin a perfect frontliner, but Elk can't auto. Elk can only slow the W over the wall. He can't get anything else done. That's 2 kills for the Aphelios. There's no fight to be had, and BLG are going to be forced to back away.
I mean, the battle lines were just perfect there for JDG as Gao's going to look, but now the turn
over committing, instant turn and burn. Kanavi going to find one. Elk, charm from over the wall. Ruler now godlike. And JDG, again, just keep coming ahead in these fights.
They are crushing him, and they can just go straight to the Baron. The Baron is spawned. It's almost 22 minutes into the game, and they're going to look right towards it. The setup on the fight was just perfect for JDG. Bin is going into this kind of concave where his AD can't hit their front line, but their entire team is hitting him.
Yeah, and the fact as well that you got missing with the hooks every time he tries to wind up the Q, just preventing any sort of damage coming out from Bin. So easy fight for JDG, and I mean JDG, they had an alright time against the BLG in the finals and in their series, but this is a different story. This is absolute decimation.
I mean, this is completely one-sided. 22 minutes in, it's a 10K gold lead. And just look at this angle right here. JDG is going to be able to actually kite back and just kind of play in this area. You know, as we see them going forward. Look at Ruler, look at Knight. It's this firing line right here, are untouched the entire time. And yes, BLG are trying to pile in, but Elk on the other side is just never really getting access to that back line. It's just such a good setup from JDG. They kite back into that area perfectly.
And I think it's just a great read from JDG as well, because they couldn't spot where Bin was on the map. So they're like, okay, well, let's just kite into where we have vision. Let's kite into where we're safe as safe as we can be, and just make sure that there's no way for any funny business to happen. And they read it perfectly. Bin tries to find the flank, but JDG have already just nestled themselves safely into that nook.
And now things are only going to get harder, and we've seen it over the last 2 fights. When, Bin or Yagao go, the entire team kind of has to go, has to follow up. And you saw even at the end of that fight as well, Yagao thought maybe there's an angle for a turn, maybe Ruler's over exec. He was wrong. It cost him his life. And the map is getting darker and darker. There are not a lot of places you can walk right now where JDG will not just one-shot you, especially with Kanavi, who, while he's been focused in so many fights, is still a big threat to a lot of the squishier members on the side of BLG.
Absolutely. I mean, the only person who can face check anything is Bin, and even then, at this point, he is going to be under a lot of threat himself. 369 now hitting 14. He's going to be able to start upgrading his teammates' mythics. There's the first one already coming through for Ruler. So the gold lead is even bigger than it tells you.
Walking in, the Ornhorn has been blown, and they're looking to take BLG out of this game one. Knight over the wall in an instant. Everfrost not going to find any purchase. Ruler throwing down big damage with those Caliber Qs. Moonshots coming in clutch. Bin now isolated. BLG need to follow up here. They're just going to lose the game, but there's no follow-up. There's no room to do anything whatsoever. JDG just choking BLG out of this game, keeping the damage, keeping the pressure. They do not want to give them a single glimmer of hope. That's half his health. It's a 3-item Ruler at 24 minutes. There is no option here for BLG. They get maybe one shot to combo everything, but yeah, JDG not going to let it happen. Lysandra going for the re-engage. JDG just going to set their eyes on the prize, set their eyes on the Nexus. This is the most dominant game one we've seen from JDG in a very long time. Ruler now legendary, 11-1-6. At this point, they're just stab padding because they can end the game whenever they damn well please. JDG kicking off with an incredible showing here in game one.
And incredible stuff from JDG. Play around Ruler, get the 80 carry fed, and let Ruler pop the hell off. It's been a story of MSI, but now it's a story for JDG as well.
Absolutely. JDG looking so clean in the 5v5s in this game, and that really is their bread and butter. They play these fights so well. They position incredibly well. They're always protecting their carries. In almost every 5v5, it just felt like Knight and Ruler were completely unthreatened, so there's no real way that BLG were going to win the fight.
I think it has been really interesting to see, though, how, like, in the regular split, we see JDG trying to play, like, around Kanavi. Let's go from base. Let's try and set up Kanavi for success. And it's kind of like, look, Ruler is there as our insurance option. He's going to be phenomenal in the team fights anyway, but a lot of what was gained for Ruler and missing was just through their own solo dominance in the lane. This was, hey, look, we know how the meta is shifting. Let's actually give Ruler these resources. And, I mean, you see the results. That was outstanding.
And I'm so interested now because this is a big pivot for Bin to be playing the tank versus tank matchup, right? In the LPL playoffs, it was always him on carries, Shun playing towards him. He got a lot of solo kills, plus a lot of focus from the jungle pressure, so they were able to create big advantages. It didn't always result in the wins, but it did result in a lot closer games. So I do wonder now, do you start to doubt the prep or the read that, hey, we need Bin on tanks after this game one that was not close at all, where Bin really couldn't have an impact?
And I think that's the thing. You kind of see the two big picks that you'd look for in the top lane taken away from Bin. Kennen was immediately banned, then we got the Gwen in the follow-up as well. So you kind of open up, as you were saying, Azale, a lot of these tank matchups because you don't really have to worry about any big threats. So do you just go back to Jax? Maybe that's the call, or Camille even, which is one of Bin's favorites.
Maybe prioritizing him sooner in the draft because Lysandra came out and probably would have banned away, but we've seen so many pretty solid answers into Ahri that I don't, like, being so keen to get to Lysandra doesn't make as much sense to me given that it's been, compared to Ahri at least in this series and in a lot of series, relatively low impact.
I'd actually love to see them go back to what has been a bit of a tried and tested one for them, which is like, hey, look, let's stick Bin on Camille. Like, for anyone who doesn't know, his entire solo queue ID is I love Camille, so he's definitely a big fan of that. Plus, you go with the Galio, then you can actually go for a dive play onto the AD carry. I think that works well.
We'll have to find out. Clearly something needs to be adjusted as we head forward, but that's enough from us. Let's send it back over to the analyst desk to further break down game one.
Thank you so much. You took the words out of our mouth. What are we going to talk about? Just kidding. We've got a lot on top of that, and wonderful insight because you did point out some problems for BLG indeed, but I think there's a lot of them, and a lot of it comes back to kind of being, for JDG, just a very well-rounded, good team, and BLG making quite a bit of mistakes as well. But we saw a lot of trends that we laid out beforehand, Mao, also coming through here in terms of, well, not in the least the bot lane picks.
Yeah, no fun allowed. We only get 2 AD carries that are meta at any given time. It previously was Zeri and Lucian. Now it's Aphelios Jinx, Maybe he gets a little bit of Xayah if you're lucky. But right now, it's very clear that the power levels of these two picks is very far ahead of everything else. But when it comes to actually playing around it, I do think we're seeing a big gap between the two teams.
Yeah, this is apparently the 19th time this has been played in 47 games. Almost like, so 40% of MSI games have been Aphelios versus Jinx. This draft was super interesting though because of like what we talked about prior, right? We were wondering what BLG were going to bring out. They did do the Aphelios Jinx trade. we had Bin Sion, which we saw previously. I thought that was an interesting adjustment. But then I know you didn't like the Nidalee pick. I didn't like the Nidalee pick.
No.
I'll have you talk about why.
Wait. You said you don't like the champion, but like it in this draft is what I heard.
No, I
wrote that down. Are you calling me a liar?
No.
Well, maybe I was just plain wrong. But right now, as of this moment, my opinion is, as the desk was saying as well, actually, I think that even with how good the early game went, right? This was basically a best case scenario. We have Shun, who is really good at the champion, and it still had no impact. I think Nidalee is huge bait. I would have much rather seen something like the Maokai, because right now, if you're not being able to get anything going in the early game, if you're not contributing to getting your AD carry ahead or providing team fight power, you're not doing your job as a jungler.
And by contrast, we talked about how it was all going to be about the bot lane, right? Kanavi, even when he was levels and camps behind, was constantly in that bot lane. And that set Ruler ahead on this Aphelios, and he ended up taking over the entire game.
Yeah, he did, and I know we talk about, only 2 champions in the bot lane can be met at any given time, but to me, as a trash tier player, it's so fun to watch someone like Ruler specifically play Aphelios.
It really is, and Aphelios is one of the champions that scales so incredibly well with player skill because of the way that his kit works, right? You not only need to have good weapon management, but because of the range of the champion, even with Calibrum, it's essential that your positioning in team fights is perfect. You need to know when to kite back, and you need to know when to play forward, and that fight was such a good example, and we see it every single time. Ruler really weaves in and out, and the rest of his team is allowing him to play forward because of the amount of pressure they provide there. Why are we all going on a Kanavi? Kanavi doesn't matter. He's bug. He's bait. It's all about Ruler. You need to take this guy down, because otherwise you're not winning the fight.
Yeah, and it got to the point in the game, like where this fight, they're already so far ahead that Ruler can just mow everyone down, even with Bin trying to be that front line from BLG. Another player you want to call out is obviously 369 on the Ornn, something he's known for playing very well. And then Knight, who we talked about. We're like, when are you going to have a great international performance? It's against an LPL team, so maybe that's a part of it.
It does still count.
Yeah, we've talked about him going up against Yagao and how comfortable he is with playing against him, but he absolutely popped off in this game.
Yeah, Ari had 100% presence in the LPL finals for a reason, and in the hands of Knight, someone who, you know, in the region has been lauded as a fantastic mid laner for such a long time, but this is kind of the performances we've come to expect.
Yeah, because, you know, with picks like Ari, picks like Lysandra, it really comes down to how proactive are you willing to play, because they really scale with, are you applying pressure? And particularly the fight that we had around bot lane where he was soaking so much, he was drawing attention, they had to keep an eye on him, and even if they knew he was there, they weren't able to actually take him down. And I mean, just look at the amount of damage he's able to output. That was with an Ari built with Merc Threats, you know, because he was playing into Lysandra, he was playing into the Nidalee, and still able to do that much because of his proactive play.
We've praised everyone and haven't talked about Kanavi, and I know it's because he started out really good, but then had a couple of int moments. But I thought when we were talking about, it was really interesting how you said, you know, Kanavi is put behind, but he can do so much to get back in the game, and other junglers around the world, like Peanut, also are able to do that. Can you explain?
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities between the two. I do think Kanavi's skirmishes were a little bit more questionable, but particularly in the early game, I think it is really important as a jungler to be able to deal, particularly with how popular the science strat is right now, to be able to absorb pressure and be aware of, okay, how do I get back in this game? Because with a pick like Kha'Zix in particular into another carry, it can really feel like you have to get something going. You have to do something. And his presence of mind just be like, I'm going to farm whatever I can. I'm going to play very respectfully, not get caught out, and still was able to be earlier to that bot side gank.
And we talked about how they set up for a potential Scion dive, but also the invade for the Nidalee. Nidalee was up so much, experience, farm, everything. And she actually had, in my opinion, less of an impact than Kanavi did on this early game, or early to mid, because of what Kanavi was able to do, because he was just kind of camping bot the entire time. We know that bot lane is super important, and they were able to come back, especially around those Herald fights too. So, I mean, I just don't like the Nidalee pick, I guess.
Okay. And you know, listen, I wrote down, I hate the pick, I love it here. So we're going to have to,
I don't know,
we're going to have to discuss on camera where
maybe that's
I don't know. Maybe it happened. But I trust that you probably said something different and I wasn't listening. That's what I tend to do. BLG also wasn't listening because talk to me about what they can do then, because there might just be a case of, obviously, as we outlined before, JDG being huge favorites and a lot better in many respects, but BLG is a team that knows them very well, so should be equipped to have a plan in game 2.
What is really hard for me is that right now you're meeting JDG in their comfort zone, but the only alternative with how dominant this game was, right, is trying to play your own style. But thus far, that style just hasn't really been working out, right? Like, even if you do get a solo laner ahead, you get a couple of kills on them. Right now, that's not what the game is about. So if you can't match them at their style and you can't try something out of meta, then there's not a lot of options left. So either they need to find a way to maybe the jungle matchup, right? Try and play better around Elk, who I did think didn't really get to play the game this time around.
Yeah, that is the TLDR, I think. And that's all from us here. We're heading to a break, and on the other side, we'll see if BLG can even up the series.
Hard to see the big team outside. Hold that thought. Coming in, Elk now trying to get the chompers down, but he's just getting cut down. Ruler ready to go forward. Easy kill on the bottom side for JDG. Yavelio so damn strong. He's got the backup. You're just walking into him. What's the rule, BLG? I think it's green, white, don't fight. But they're going to try to make it to New York anyway. Niner on the backside, huge damage. Ruler coming in. It's massive, my God. Been out of mana completely. Konami in the backside. They find one, but it's right into the ult of Ruler. Been back and forth thus far, but now JDG can look to take over their marked. Will he take him down? The Jerkin's coming in. Ruler again, taking over. JDG outplaying in the fight in the extended brawl. They take the dragon, they come out on top, and they're killing everybody.